And joining me now is Democratic Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who sits on the Homeland Security Committee. Senator, thank you for joining us. I do want to start with Dr. Fauci's hearing today. Senator Rand Paul says that he will vote to hold him in contempt. So will you vote to hold Dr. Fauci in contempt of Congress?
No, I don't believe he's in contempt of Congress. Now, people are entitled to think that he was incompetent or he was behaving in an inappropriate ways, but it's not that level. I've said the same thing, whether it was about even Mayorkas. Now I never support impeachment. Now, I do think he did a terrible job as a border security, but overall, there's a difference between that too. And overall, I would think that I think Senator Paul was a little excessive with some of the theatrics. I think you can make a point without making it seem a little too over the top.
And Dr. Fauci did say that he chose to plead the Fifth because he believes that Senator Paul has a, quote, unhinged obsession with trying to prosecute him. So are those valid concerns, or does it look like maybe Dr. Fauci was trying to hide something by not testifying and answering questions?
Well, I would just remind people that, President Biden gave him a pardon before he left office, right? So I don't think he has to worry about anything. And now if someone thinks that you could be held accountable based on something that you would say in that hearing, now, of course, he got the legal advice to just plead the Fifth, and that's why he decided to do that.
So you're saying he should have testified and provided the public with some answers?
What I'm saying that, when I think Dr. Fauci knew that he was heading into like a loaded room overall, and now that he made that decision, that's entitled to do that thing now. So overall, I do think it's entirely reasonable if you're angry with some of the way he's did or how he decisions during the pandemic. I didn't agree with all the things he did either, but overall, he's entitled to do that thing. And overall, you can make a point with not making it a little excessive as it was today.
And Senator, you have been outspoken, especially recently, about the direction of the Democratic Party. You said you would leave the party if it adopted an anti-Israel stance. Are you saying that right now you still view the Democratic Party as pro-Israel?
No, I don't. I see the Democratic Party as some people are trying to have it both ways, where they won't really be willing to go the full side the way with the left. But I think overall, without a doubt, there's very few that I'm aware of that are proud to stand with Israel through everything. And if you have to criticize anyone in that circumstances, many of them will pick Israel as someone to criticize. For me, I think Iran is the one issue, Hamas, Hezbollah, and these kinds of nations that are helping them through it is two. Israel is our special ally. And now I don't know why the Democratic Party continues to criticize him. And they use terms like genocide, or, people aren't calling out the mayor in New York. Had zero authority to do that and say things that only was just inflame thing. And it was a day or two before, then someone was stabbed, walking out of a synagogue.
And Senator, nearly half of House Democrats voted this month to cut off aid to Israel. Isn't that your red line?
No, that's not my red line, but it's not something I'm surprised for overall. The one thing that I've read that was more now, Leader Jeffries put out a letter, saying that he's going to vote against that. And what I read in Axios, they said that brought maybe 30 to 40 people along with him on that. So if you start reaching now, maybe approaching 150 Democrats, that's outrageous. We're the Democratic Party. Where is the only country in that region that has our kinds of values and protects women and minorities and allows people to live their lives free speech and for all those things. That's just Israel. And now, why are you standing up for these regimes or these kinds of organizations that are trying to destroy Israel, like whether it's Hamas or whether Hezbollah or Iran, as Iran continues to execute just protesters that just want democracy? More and more Democrats decide to just criticize Israel. Look at that mess in Michigan too. El Sayed, essentially a pro-Hamas, person in Michigan. And now there's another poll. Pew had a poll. 44% of American Muslims show Hamas in positive light. Now that's distressing to me too.
And Senator, Majority Leader John Thune says that Republicans would welcome you into their party. Do you still draw a red line at ever joining the GOP?
I'm not going to be a Republican. And I would just remind anybody that I've been very clear on that. Whether it's the president or the Republicans are putting down perfectly loyal conservative senators, whether it's Cornyn or Cassidy or these people. So I don't think that Republican Party wants a pro-choice, pro-gay, trans communities, pro-union. And, if you look at my voting records, I disagree with my party on some issues like Israel, for example, but, I am a Democrat. And if someone is frustrated in the Democratic Party, I would be frustrated with someone like Bernie Sanders. Why aren't people angry? Why they promoted, someone like Platner, an accused rapist? I never blew up, the Maine Senate race. He had no regrets. So really, Bernie, you have no regret endorsing and proud to stand with an accused rapist, a guy that roughs up his ex-girlfriends, a guy that had a Nazi tattoo on his chest. Some of the things that are outrageous as a Democrat are coming from people in this party, and it's not me overall.
Senator, before we go, I do want to ask you about Senator Mitch McConnell, who's been hospitalized for more than 6 weeks now. You've faced health issues in the past and had to make tough choices when it comes to privacy and transparency. Do you think Senator McConnell needs to be more forthcoming about his health?
I think it's really strange that people are attacking him at this point. He's not claiming he's going on Dancing with the Stars. Yes, he's in rough shape. He's an elderly man. He's not running for re-election, and he's not behaving in a way or claiming otherwise. He's recovering from that. We have other things we could focus on. I'm not going to pick on anyone, whether it was Senator Feinstein when she was struggling way back then, or Senator McConnell. He's not running for re-election. Now we're going to be on recess soon. Regardless, I'm not going to pick on anyone, for political advantage at this point. And I hope he gets better. Honestly, I think that's the most thing. We're going to find out where he really is, after the August's recess, overall.
We'll have to leave it there. Senator John Fetterman, thanks for your time.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.